Today we're taking a look at Apocrypha, which is the adventure card game. It is by the same designer as the Pathfinder adventure card games, and I've treated two of those on my channel and played them a bunch. The game here shares many of the same mechanics. The overall foundation of the mechanics are the same, so if you're familiar with those games, you'll have a leg up, and you're going to need it because, as you know, if you know anything about this game, the rule book is problematic to say the least, and I'll try to wade my way through some of it by giving a little bit more of a rules overview maybe than I normally would, because I had a lot of trouble learning the game, and I can't even say that I quote-unquote know it fully because it's just very confusingly written. That said, there is a lot to be played here for the soloist who likes card games, card manipulation, and story. I would say it's heavier than the Pathfinder system in the sense that there are more options and complications among the characters playing cooperatively than in Pathfinder, so more rules. You might say it's more fiddly, but it adds a little more depth. There's also, I think, a better developing story than in those games, although with some tweaks I think it could have even been stronger, but I'll get into that later on. It is not as complex if you're familiar with, say, for example, Arkham Horror LCG. It's not as complex nor as rich as that in terms of story and also game mechanics. It falls somewhere, I would say, more complicated than Pathfinder, less so than Arkham Horror, and to me it's a little bit reminiscent of Mistfall in the sense that the complexity of the interactions among the characters and the assisting and things like that require a lot of thought. It's less complex than Mistfall. So if you are familiar with any of those games, all of which I've talked about in various ways on my channel, although I've never done an Arkham Horror card game video per se, you'll get a sense of the complexity of this game. So let's get into what is this game, what is the story here. The overall story is that you're playing in a contemporary setting, and we are treating here, this is from Box 1, The World. These two, there's one here and one down there that haven't been released yet. You are playing a character who is called a saint, who is sent here or who exists here to save the world from the apocalypse that has come to pass at this point. And it is up to you as the saint to thwart, well, I guess it hasn't come to pass yet. It's up to you to thwart the modern apocalypse that is being created by 9 powerful entities, and you play as a character, a saint, who has a deck of cards that represents your life, very much like in Pathfinder. You're playing with 15 cards, and if you don't get through your mission or your adventure before your cards run out, you will die, and we'll talk about that. In this game, nothing is quite so simple, but you will attain a death. You have to fight your way through various locations and overcome various minions and masters who stand in your way, and as the course of the game goes, you will be improving your decks and you will be strengthening yourself to fight ever greater threats. Now, that said, you can play these missions in any order. This is the storybook that details what the missions are. I think they're called missions. Let's see. Stories, I guess they're called, or chapters. That makes more sense. And there are these 9 chapters in this story. They do follow a calendar, but as said, you could play in any order you want. I have played a few of them and built up some characters, but for this video, I'm going to the December chapter, Christmas in Candlepoint, because I think it offers me an opportunity to show you a little bit more of the mechanics of the game than some of the ones that I've played. And I'm taking 3 new characters. So I'm starting with the base deck of the characters, and it's going to be what it is. So let's take a look at the setup here. Again, if you're familiar with Pathfinder, you'll be familiar with this basic structure wherein you have locations that you create based on the chapter instructions. And in this case, you have a chapel, a hospital, Main Street, and the manor of the town. There is a story as to why you are in these places, and I will mention what that is. And you set them up according to various threats and gifts, is what they're called in this game, that comprise the deck of the story. You also seed into that deck the master and the minions that you are fighting. You don't know exactly where they are, and you have an object ultimately to kill, or in this case, in the jargon of the game, and there's a lot of game-specific jargon here, you need to sanctify the master in order to win. But it's not so easy as finding it and defeating it, because if you have any location, and in this game they're called a nexus, if any of the nexuses remain unguarded or open, he can escape to another, or in this case actually it's a she, can escape to another one. So it becomes a sort of cat and mouse game, and in this one in particular, there is literally a cat that is one of the minions that you're fighting, and we'll take a look here. It's the Yule cat. It's a very, very dark card, unfortunately. It's got a great mechanic, which is why one of the reasons that I chose it. But let's take a look, first of all, at the specific story here of what we're trying to do as we move through the chapter Christmas in Candlepoint. Candlepoint is the town that you are in for this first part of the game. And in this situation, it's a white Christmas. Snow is falling and stockings are hung on the local mantles. Candlepoint's youths are told of the troll woman Gryla, whose Yule lads leave rotten potatoes in their shoes unless they behave. Her Yule cat eats children who don't get new clothes for Christmas. These are silly tales, yet every child clutches their Christmas socks tight. What you need to do is to corner Gryla wherever there's trouble as the hours pass. And this somewhat strange sentence refers to what the game calls the structures of the game. And it is instructing you to set up the game structure to determine how you move through the game. Find the card that corresponds to the various phrases here, and what can be confusing is that the corner, wherever there's trouble, and as the hours pass are all structure cards, but Gryla is a minion card, and you need to find her too. So it makes sense once you know that, but if you don't know that, it can be a little confusing. In any case, these cards will explain to you basically what you need to do is to sanctify her or kill her ultimately, as well as defeat as many of her minions as you possibly can in order to get to her. And you need to do that before time runs out. Time in this chapter and in many of the chapters is kept by 24 omen cards. Omen cards are pulled at the beginning of each turn. They are the cards that will allow you to investigate or move through the locations, and we'll see this when we get to an example of the gameplay. They also have either an omen of hope or an omen of doom. They will give you instructions and what you need to do to use the card. In this case, they're all investigate cards, which again allows you to progress through the cards that you're encountering, and then they will each have an effect that will take place during the course of the turn or the part of the turn in which you use the card. And generally speaking, the omens of hope will be positive effects and the omens of doom would be a negative effect. So for example, if we were investigating using this omen of doom, we would need to suffer a certain type of damage before we even began, and that would be mandatory in order to do. Now, if we were investigating using this omen of hope, we would be able to get this benefit, and what this means is we would, before we even began, we would get to look at a card, so we would know what was coming and perhaps decide to do some things to mitigate its threat or challenge, or maybe avoid it altogether. And each of the omen cards have different impacts on the game, on that aspect of the turn, and that's in fact one of the parts of the game. I'm just going to shuffle these up again, so when we begin our turn, we don't know exactly what's there. This is one of the aspects of the game that I think works quite well, because it adds a level of decision making, whether you're going to use that hope or doom omen. You may have some omens in your hand already. The other impact is that the omen is going to potentially flip the Nexus card from one side to another. So here we're looking at the doom side of the chapel, and each Nexus card begins on its doom side at the beginning of the game, and they will all have impacts and effects. And the first word here refers to the part of the game turn where that takes effect. And I'm not going to get into that now, it's going to be too overwhelming, but simply to say that there is also a side of hope. So if you were investigating this, for example, using this card, it says investigate. Well, we have to do something, and then it says flip your Nexus to doom and investigate it. So if you pulled in this card to allow you to investigate, and the Nexus was sitting here at hope, you would need to flip it over to doom. If it was already at doom, you would just investigate it in that manner. Who are you, and how do you do anything in the game? I am going to be playing 3 characters for this demonstration, and there are 10 possible characters you can play in the game. I think this is one of the many strengths of the game. The characters with their special abilities, which I'll point to in a moment, do feel very differentiated, and because of the special abilities, not so much because of the cards that they have in their hand, and I will get to the reasons why in a moment. Everybody is having 4 types of baseline cards in their hand. These represent gifts that are centered around, for example, the mind, the soul, rage, or the body. And the cards, I will just show you this when we do the gameplay, but the cards are thematic to those very general concepts. And everybody has different types of numbers of cards of that, and you'll also notice that the positioning of the icons for mind, for example, are in different places for everybody. Well, they're all in different places. This position for soul, her soul is over here at the top, his is on the right, his is on the left. This does actually matter, because in the game, the positioning of the characters impacts whether or not characters can assist one another with certain abilities. I happen to think this works very poorly in the game. It's confusing. Now, I'm only playing as a single character, and I'll say the missions or the chapters that I've played before this video, I've only been playing 2 characters, and none of them are these characters. I'll show you the characters I've been playing in a minute. The reason I only played 2 is because per the rules, if you have just 2 characters, you don't need to worry about this positioning that anybody can help anybody else. But with 3 or more characters, what you need to concern yourself with, for example, is that River Batiste can only use his soul benefits to help somebody to his right. So he could only help, for example, Ophelia Willows. Now, these are supposed to be representing people, I guess, sitting around a table. He could not help Frank Block. It just becomes, frankly, confusing. I'm demonstrating the 3 characters. I'll try to work it out when it comes up, because I do want to show that aspect of it. Personally, I think for a co-op game, whether you're playing solo or with a group, if you're in the same location, just thematically, it makes sense. If you're in the same location, you can help somebody. If you're not in the same location, you can't, period. The where you're sort of sitting at the table and how the game mechanics go around the table, I think just it's a level of complication that doesn't make sense to me. And it has further impact because, let me just show you one of the characters that I was been playing before. Sorry for the glare. This is Matthew Lockhart. He's the gentleman burglar. He's been through a couple of chapters with me, and when you go through a chapter, you can pick up benefits or detriments. He's picked up these 2 benefits as he went through the chapters. These are additional, we'll call them attributes or skills that he can use. They're one-time use only skills, and you are meant to slot them in the halo around the character. And the game doesn't come with these dividers, but you kind of need them if you're going to play this way. And the positioning of the slot is also going to determine whether or not you can use this to aid somebody. And again, for me, it just didn't work conceptually, but that is part of the game, to have these things positioned as well when you are basically leveling up characters. But back to where we are here. As mentioned, the characters not only have the same categories of cards. Everybody ultimately ends up with a deck of 15 cards, although the balance of the cards differs. And you are given, when you start, here's another character card. So we'll take a look at River Baptiste. You are given the specific hand that you need, and these are the actual cards that you will be starting with when you start the first chapter with a character. So his deck is these cards plus 4 omen cards. And now I don't know, those are random omen cards. I showed you those earlier. I don't know whether he could have all omens of hope, he could have all omens of doom, or some mixture thereof. It was just meant to be random. And so everybody has that starting deck of cards. Additionally, there's the hand size represented by the hand. So he's going to be having 5. She'll have 6, and he will have 4. Having a large hand size can be challenging because, again, when you move through your deck, if you need to draw a card and you cannot draw a card, or if you need to absorb a certain type of damage or any damage with a card to discard and you don't have it, you are, well, in this case, you are faded from the game, and we'll talk about what that means later. Additionally, on the card here, you see these lines here. These refer to skills. These are keywords: conjure, resist, sense. She's got charm, conjure, and sense, and he has resist, sense, and strike. These keywords will become important when you are facing certain threats or gifts that you are trying to either avoid or attain, because if you can match a keyword, you will be able to add in that amount of die or dice to your roll. Well, where are the dice, and how does that come into play? This is the pile of dice that you get with the game, and these become your strength, the measure of your ability to succeed or fail in the game. And what will happen is that the values in here, so for example, if River Baptiste is trying to do something using his soul, with this 4 value, he automatically gets to start with 4 dice. That's his baseline. He's very strong in soul. If he was facing a card that had, for example, the sense keyword, he would get to add in 1 bonus die. This is just baseline without using any other cards from his hand to help him, and he could potentially be doing that. When you make the roll of whatever it is, you are only taking the 3 highest dice at the end of the roll, assuming there's nothing else that will mitigate that. And of course there could be, because pretty much in this game everything has mitigating factors in any case, and you're looking to roll equal to or above a certain value to either avoid something or to get it. And I'll just show you that through the gameplay. That's the basic mechanic of the game. But I wanted to show you everything on the character card, and we'll just take a closer look here to see how this is laid out. The specific attributes of the character I will go through when it comes up in the game, but they are all quite thematic. She's a karmatologist, so one of the things that she gets to do is she can look at a card in her deck at the beginning of every turn and either leave it there or move it to the bottom of her deck, so she can sort of control a little bit what she might get. And, well, she doesn't have this ability yet, so. And this is our bad cop. He has an ability, if he's using his rage dice, which are the red ones, he can through the cost of recycling a card, add another one. So that's pretty good. And then he has another ability here that will show when it comes up in the game. So the characters are very differentiated in that way. It does feel like you're playing, I've played 3 different characters so far, and they all feel very different. And now these are 3 new characters to me, and I have a feeling they're going to feel different too. This is the Christmas in Candlepoint chapter of the story, and every chapter of the story has particular rules that deal with the master, if there is one in the story, the minions, and how powers and other things may be impacted, particularly by the story. It doesn't just tell you what specific locations there are, but there are rules that are specific to the story. I'm not going to detail these now because it's going to throw too much at you. I think the best way to see how all this works is to look at some of the cards and just start in with a turn. But I do want to call your attention to this chart here for the Yule lads, because they are some of the minions that you will encounter. We mentioned that before, and what's kind of cool about it is that when you encounter them, each time they will have not only different powers based on a roll that you do, but these powers will come into play during different parts of the turn. So you're going to see these keywords here, and I'll just show you quickly the turn order, but we will go through a turn, that in each aspect of the turn, and these keywords like target, assist, mutate, these are all different things, even if in some cases they have the same impact. So for example, if you are using one of your powers to help somebody during the support phase of a turn, it may have different rules and different impacts than if you were using one of your powers to assist somebody during the assist phase of the turn. So when you are looking at the cards, you need to be paying attention to those keywords. The other thing you need to pay attention to, and I mentioned this earlier, as something that I don't necessarily think works so well, are these types of symbols. Now, you've seen these before. I have just kind of glossed over them. I haven't even mentioned them. But you need to look at this symbol, because this symbol is going to precede every bit of text, and it will dictate whether whether the text is referring just to you, or say to somebody else in your same location, or any number of these things. So that's something else to look for, and I will certainly point that out as we take a look at the cards. So what I'm going to do now is just begin. I've got this set up per the rules. Anybody can be at any location here at the beginning, and you saw this before. It's the same situation. I've got River and Frank together in the chapel to start, and I've put Ophelia, the karmatologist, over there in the manor. Now, who knows why? I mean, I could have done anything, but I just had it set up this way. So that's how we're going to go with it. And we will be beginning with, we'll just take a turn with each of the 3 characters and go through that. And if I was actually playing a game, I would be drawing up all 3 hands at once, because you need that to determine whether you have a potential assist cards. But for right now, I'm just going to draw River's hand, and we'll take a look. Holds 5 cards. We'll take a look at the cards that he gets and go through them one by one to show you some of the things that you might have in your hand. Here we have a soul card. You can tell that by the icon here that matches this icon here, which tells you if he is encountering something and using his soul to overcome it, he gets a baseline of 4 dice. But what this card is going to do, potentially, it's a gift. He can discard it. This icon means that he can do that. He can discard it, and it will boost his soul, meaning it will give him 1 more d6 to roll for a soul roll. And in that case, it would be a total of 5 d6s to start if he discarded this sparks. Now, if he uses this during the assemble phase, and this is where you have to be really paying close attention to these keywords, because we look back here in the turn order and we see assemble is down. It's not right at the beginning, it's further down. If we use it during the assemble phase, then we can basically switch out body and soul. So if we were encountering a card that we needed to use body, which is this green value here. He only rolls 2 dice for, but we want to use soul because we could roll 4 dice for that. We could use this card at a different phase to switch out body and soul. So this is a great card for us, and it also has these keywords that I mentioned that at the bottom that would potentially allow other dice to be added in if we were encountering a card that matched those keywords. Here is one of his mind cards. This is called Bones, and it is a mind gift, and the first line, pretty clear. We can just put it into our discard to boost, to add 1 die to our mind. Our mind value baseline is 2, so if we wanted to be able to roll 3 purple dice, we could just discard this. If we use this in the evaluate phase, we could discard it, and what this means is that the person who was taking their action would re-roll a dice and then trash one. Now, what does this mean? Well, you see this symbol here. We haven't encountered this before. This symbol is significant and it differs from this symbol. And this is where we need to refer back to this chart to say that this refers to a saint to your left or right. So, this evaluate power of this card is not used for us. It is used to help somebody else during their evaluate phase. And what it means is that we discard it so that the active saint, the person whose turn it is, can re-roll one of their die that they have already rolled and then trash one. We've picked up an Omen of Doom. This is Horror Show, and this is a horrible, horrible card, because what it means is that if you need to use this card to investigate a location, what we must do is when we get to the stage of looking at the dice that we rolled, we have to throw away the highest one. And that is really quite painful because, of course, you're trying to typically get a high value to succeed. Oh, we got another Omen of Doom. Here, what we need to do is during that evaluate phase, we need to trash or throw away the highest mind die. Now, that is going to be a purple die. If we're using this for a test that doesn't use any purple dice, this basically has no impact. Of course, we will not know what we're using it for necessarily or probably until we pull up that card, unless we've been able to look ahead through another card. So that is, oh, we have one more card in our hand here. We've got Muscle Memory. This is a body card, obviously, and it is, we can discard it to boost our body to give us 1 more die to roll. So our baseline body value is 2. This would allow us to roll 3 green die if we discarded it. It also can be used for somebody at our location, which could be us or somebody else in the evaluate phase. And what this means is that we would discard it, and the active player in our location, either us or someone else, would get to re-roll a body or a rage die, a green or a red die, if they were using it. So we've got a couple of cards that can help others, and at least one of them can help only us, and one of them can help us and others. So this is our hand here, and to start the turn, we'll refer back to the turn order, we draw the top card of the clock. The clock, again, is this 24 card deck, and in this chapter it is comprised all of omen cards. So we draw it up and we place it into our hand, and unfortunately it is an Omen of Doom. It is a card that if we use to investigate, we must sacrifice it. That means we bring it out of the game, which is fine because we don't really want it, but we then must recycle 1 random card from our hand. Then we flip our Nexus to Doom and investigate it. Well, we're starting at the chapel here. It's already at Doom, and therefore we wouldn't be flipping it. We would simply be investigating. Now, unfortunately, as I showed you, here is our hand. If I had an Omen of Hope, I could just put this in my hand and maybe choose to investigate with an Omen of Hope. But as it is, I have this card, and I only have other Omens of Doom. I don't have to investigate using this one, though, And I think I'm not going to do that. I don't want to recycle a card right now. Recycle means that I put it under my deck. I can draw it again, but I lose it in my hand. And, you know, it might not be so bad if it was one of the omens, but what if it was one of the cards I need? I only have 3 cards right now that give me any powers and skills and things. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to investigate using this Omen of Doom feedback. And I'm going to hope that in my investigation I don't need to use my mind die. Now, my mind is a 2 value anyway, as you can see here, so that's pretty low. If it turned out that I had to do that, I might have to try to avoid the threat, because that would be pretty bad. I'm already only starting with 2. But what I'm going to do now, moving on to the second phase of the turn, this is the supporting phase where I could play powers that help other saints. Well, I am taking the first turn, so the only person I could really help is myself. And I do have 2 powers that I could use here. And this one, actually, I could play this at the start. I could recycle 1 card and draw 1 card. And this is actually a good thing to show you some of the ambiguity of the game, because you play your powers, which is this, as I read it. You play your powers during the support phase, but this power is actually something you use at the start phase, which technically has already happened. So, you know, I don't know. I guess I should have maybe played this first and then drawn the top card. It's a little ambiguous, but in any case, I could recycle a card and draw 1 card, and maybe I was meant to do that before this Omen of Doom came in. So, given the ambiguity, I'm just going to let it go. I'm not going to use any of my powers right now. We will skip to investigate. We're going to play an Omen to flip the top card of this location, and the Omen that we have decided to play, based on the reasoning that I gave, is this one. We're going to play feedback. Now, it says we sacrifice it. Sacrifice means putting it in the box. I keep these out until my turn is over, because I need to remind myself of the impact of the card on what I'm doing. So I'm here in the chapel, and I'm going to simply open, or investigate this location and pull open this first card, and it is a body gift of red shoes. Well, this looks like something I would want. We take a look at it, and we see that this is a card which can be used in the future to boost a body. It can also be used for any saint. If I recycle it, let's see, I could move and then examine something, and if I find a threat, I would suffer a damage. So that's pretty thematic. It's some sneakers. They let me move around, basically. Perhaps I could move somewhere where someone else is, or a place we might want to go and take a look at what might be coming there. And it has these keywords. How do I get this? Well, I need to roll using my body, either a 10 or greater, or if I decide to use my rage, I need to roll a 14 or greater. So let's remind ourselves again, my baseline collection of dice for using a body roll is 2, and for using a rage is 3. So we think to ourselves, well, we might want to try to acquire that using 3, but that's a higher number that we need to get to. And again, reminding ourselves we're lucky here, because we're not going to be using mind is not even an option to get those shoes, and so this potential negative isn't even coming into play. So let's take a look and see again what we have in our hand, how we could possibly help ourselves if we could at all. In terms of the cards, these let's just clarify again. So we're in the investigate phase. Here we're choosing to confront this card. We're going to skip over avoid, that you can avoid something if you want, or try to. We are going to initiate. These are activate powers that happen first. Well, we don't have any. And now we are going to act. So what we're doing now is we're choosing our virtue. We're targeting this card with either our body, where we need to roll a 10 or greater, or our rage, where we need to roll a 14 or greater. And the first thing I'm going to do is look in my hand and see whether I have, well, I don't have any rage cards. Now, first of all, I don't have to, by the way, use anything, because remember, your deck of cards, your 15 starting cards, are your life. So on the one hand, you want to try to accumulate cards, and if you win a card, you bring it into your hand. You want to try to do that, but on the other hand, if you're reckless and just start throwing cards away to try to get one card, you may find yourself out of cards, and then you will fade away from the chapter. Now, there are ways of healing, but you need certain cards to do that, and there's no means a guarantee that that can happen. So I do see that I have this muscle memory card. I could discard it, and I could boost my body. So, you know, it's early in the game. I'm not too concerned about the impact of running through some cards. Maybe I'll be able to heal at some point. And I like this card because it does anything in this game, I feel, that gives you an opportunity to examine something in advance is helpful, and it especially allows you to move and examine something. So I really want this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discard this fellow. He's going to help me out by adding in. So here's our two dice for our baseline body. I'm going to discard this to give me one more green die. And then the last thing I'm going to do to see whether I've got anything that can help is check out these keywords here to see if there is any type of match. I have Conjure, Resist, and Sense. This is Tool, Wicked Charm, and Resist. I see Resist here is actually matching, and in fact, I should have looked at that earlier because I might not need to use this guy. In fact, I don't think I do need to use this guy. He's got the Resist as well. I'm going to go back and retract. I'm going to say I'm going to use my 2 body die, and I notice here I've got a Resist of 2. I get to throw in 2 bonus die here just for my innate skills to try to get these shoes. I think that's going to be enough. I don't have to burn a card. And so what I'm looking for when I roll this is a 10 or greater using the 3 highest dice. And just based on my experience in the past, I'm going to pull back here so the roll doesn't go off camera. And all right, hopefully that's enough room. We'll see, we're looking for a 10 or greater. So we have a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We didn't do it. But in this case, we just lose this. It just goes back into the box. Now, let me just pull up, before we say goodbye to the turn of River, let me just take a look at Frank's hand. This is Frank over here. He's standing with River in the chapel, and he has a hand size of 4. So I want to just, here he is. He has a hand size of 4, and just want to look and see if we had decided to use this rage. We could have potentially asked for assistance here from him. During this assemble stage, he could have recycled a card to give us another die. So we didn't do that, and we don't have anything. We didn't ask for assistance, and there are other ways of getting assistance, but nothing that would have worked here. So in fact, it doesn't really matter what he has in his hands. We have lost this, so we need to sacrifice these shoes, which is too bad, actually. I wanted that card, but I guess I didn't want it enough to spend a card to get it. So that takes us to, let's see, we went through, there was no assistance, and therefore we didn't have to roll a mutation. I'll explain that when it comes up. We assembled our dice, we evaluated them, and indeed, unfortunately, we failed. We don't need to, we didn't fail versus a threat, so this just goes away, and that is it. So we have to sacrifice the gift, put it in the box, I will do that, and we need to skip, there's nothing to sanctify, which is, we're not facing a minion or a master. We are not going to move or give a card to anyone. We're simply going to end, which is resetting our hand and then passing the turn. Now, this is something that I want to call your attention to, because you have the option. We have a hand size of 5, and we didn't actually use any cards. So there are options here to the reset. You need to ultimately be at your hand size. We can take cards from our hand and discard them. we can take cards from our hand and shuffle them back into our deck. And I really want to call your attention to this. It's on page 13 of the rule book down here, because I played a couple games, by the way, before, vastly incorrectly, before figuring some stuff out. And this was one of the things I didn't do. Just to look here, discard any number of cards of your choice. Then, if you still have too many cards, recycle any extra cards. So, and then you draw cards until you have your hand size. Well, that's up at the top. But this recycle is very key, because recycle is your draw pile. So if you have a card that you think you might want to be able to use later, but is in your hand now, and you have an excess of a hand size, you can put it back in the recycle. And I think that's a pretty important thing. It's a little ambiguous as far as I read it as to whether you can only do the discarding if your hand size is over. I read it to be that you can just reset regardless. So in this particular case, my choice would be, do I want to get rid of a couple of these omens so that I can open up my hand for more cards that I can actually use? And if I do want to get rid of them, do I want them to go into my discard or my draw pile? Well, you might say to yourself, well, why wouldn't you just put them in the discard? One of the reasons you wouldn't just put them in the discard is that there are healing cards that allow you to bring cards back from your discard, and sometimes those cards that come back are random, so they may come back anyway. And just putting them in the discard isn't 100% safe. But for this reset, as I read the rules, I am going to take both of these Omens of Doom, especially this horror show is just terrible. I'm going to take both of these, and I am going to put them in my discard. So I will do that, and then I will draw up to my hand size, so I will be getting, well, another Omen of Doom. And I got a Rage card. This is the Sword Cane. This is a Rage gift, and that's good for me, because it's nice to have at least the option of having one card of all 4 types. I think if you can, it gives a little more flexibility. So here is Frank. He's got a hand size of 4, as I mentioned, and we did sort of drew his card. I drew his hand, but didn't really do anything with it because we weren't going to use anything. So let's take a quick look. I'll try to speed up a teeny bit more what we have here. We've got a Reaper. This is a Rage card, and our big stat here is Rage. Frank is an angry guy. He rolls 4 dice to start with on Rage, and he also has a power that allows him to add a Rage die. So this is like going where the money already is with this Reaper. We've got a couple of Omens of Doom. Not great. This horror show again. Wow, did I pick that? Feels like I picked that up from the discard, but I don't think I did, unfortunately. And Pearl-Handed Revolver. So we don't have a lot of variety here, but let us, we're going to draw again. We're going to take our turn here, and in the first step, we'll be drawing from the timer, the clock, and we got an Omen of Hope. So let's refocus here and check out what is this Omen of Hope. We will investigate. We flip to Hope. We're not on Hope right now. And then we can examine one and investigate it. Well, that's pretty good. By the way, I failed to mention something. Back to in the evaluate phase of River's turn, we needed to trash the highest soul die had we been rolling one. Now, we were not rolling soul, which is blue. We were rolling body, but I should have really just pointed that out, because this is something, and this is again where the game can get a little detailed, because it's not like every Nexus card you have to check something and evaluate. Every Nexus card, it's like you have to check something in a different. So this Nexus at the hospital, you have to check at the end. This Nexus on Main Street is something to do if you win. And this Manor Nexus is something to do also at the end. And then, of course, there's the other side of them. So here, well, I guess this is related. That's pretty thematic. So we have to trash the highest soul die if we're encountering this Chapel in Doom, but we get to add a soul die if we are trying to attain a holy gift. So I will show you how this works, and also, demoing game. It's nice to have some success, so maybe this will help us. we are going to investigate. Frank's going to investigate this church. He's a bad cop, but he's going to investigate the church with hope. So what he has to do is sacrifice, get rid of this card. He's going to flip the nexus, which is here, to the hope side. And right away, when you do this, you should just confirm and see what this is that you're going to have to do. This isn't going to come until later. And it says examine one. So examine one means we get to take a look at the top card here and see what it is, and maybe we decide we want to just avoid it or whatever. So let's see. Well, oops, pulled from the wrong pile. It is this. Oh, it's a minion. All right, it is minion 1, and minion 1 in this game, I think that's the cat. I have to confirm that. Yes, that is the cat. This is a threat. This is the Yule cat, and when you have this, it's same mechanic. You know, you're trying to meet or exceed one of these values. This is going to be body or rage. Well, rage is good. Here, this I looked at this card before. It's pretty cool, actually. If you know and love cats, you can see that this is quite thematic to what a cat might be. In this particular case, at the end, if we were trying to kill, or let's just say corral this cat alone during the confrontation, if we were trying to do that, we basically we have to discard our whole hand and then shuffle this back in. Basically, the cat escapes. I mean, as anyone knows, it's hard to corral a cat. If we get help, though, we don't have to do that. So maybe we can get some help from our friend River, and that's something to consider. So I'm gonna choose to confront this, and it'll give me a chance to show you actually what can happen when somebody tries to help, because it's not all good. All right, so this is a threat. It's a true threat, and we're going to be encountering it using body or rage. We're going to be rolling 4 baseline rage dice on our own, just from our inherent, let me get River out of the way, from our inherent capacity. And we can also choose to recycle one of our cards and add a rage die. Well, I am definitely going to do that. Let me just make sure I'm doing this all in the proper order, because this is, you know, the game is procedural in this way, and I don't want to skip ahead. So we drew the top card, and we're looking to see, are we playing any powers that are going to help us? No, we're not. We are, because our power is used during the assemble phase. We're investigating. Okay. We're choosing a virtue. We're choosing rage. That's our 4 die right there. Is somebody going to assist us? Well, this is the question. Under normal circumstances, if it weren't for this cat, I would definitely not ask for assistance, because I know I can get 4 dice here on my own. I can add a rage die, and I have these 2 rage cards. So I could be rolling, you know, I could be rolling this number of dice to try to get to 16. The problem is, because of this card, because of this little, not little, but this significant thematic effect here, if I really want to get rid of this thing, I need help. So I am going to ask for help, and I'm going to ask for help from River. And how can River help me? Let's see. Well, River picked up in the last turn because he chose to reset his hand. He picked up a rage gift, this sword cane. We look here closely at this symbol here. Get out the old pointer. Right there. This means that he can help a saint during the assemble stage who's using rage by discarding this card. And what this means is, this symbol means the active saint. That means, in this case, Frank the bad cop can add 1 body die if it's versus a dreamer threat, or he can add 2 body die instead. So as I read this, this card is going to allow 2 body die, to 2 green die, to come into this roll through help from River and his sword cane. And this is used during the assemble stage. Now, you think, wow, that's awesome. He's getting a lot of help here. However, this is what I said I would get to, and now I'm getting to it. This was the assistance. After assist, you have to go to mutate. If you are assisted, the entire situation gets changed, and it gets changed by rolling a mutation die. What does that mean? What that means is there are 5 different types of mutations: terrifying, swarming, fiery, rock solid, and unseen, that can happen in the game. These are 2-sided cards, and they each have 6 effects. One side is to use versus a threat, which is what we're encountering, and the other is used for all other checks. The first thing you do is roll a d6. If you roll a 6, you just have to roll again. I don't know actually why they wouldn't have just tried to think up a 6 one, so it would work out. But in any case, so we roll a 4, and these are just random 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are dealing with the rock solid mutation, and this is the threat side. Now I'm re-rolling this die to see what the impact is. In general, the higher roll you get, the better. But it's going to affect everything, and of course I got the worst roll. So what this means is during our evaluate phase, we have to trash the highest die. Well, that's pretty stinky, but that is the impact of having the help that we're getting from River. So, where are we? We've got these 4, these 2 from River. Let me look and see, do any of these keywords match up? Resist, sense, and strike. Let's refer back to, where's that cat? Even on cards, they elude you. Fey and sense. Did I say we had a sense? We do. We have a sense 1, so we're getting that die as well. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think this is looking good, but it is what it is. So let me just reconfirm that I've done this right. Yeah, I think so. If the cat had the dreamer keyword, we would have gotten to add 2 body dice, but he only has that. So this looks great to roll a 16 with 3 dice, but well, I shouldn't say great. That's a high number. It looks okay. But we have to trash our highest dice. So, I mean, it's rough. It's rough. And it's meant to be. I mean, this is one of the minions. So, again, let me, that wasn't my roll. Let me just pull back here so I can try to get the whole roll on. I know I should be using a dice tray. Definitely want to use a dice tray with this game, but I don't have one. All right. Didn't get it all on and didn't roll well at all. So despite all of that, I mean, you can see quite clearly here the highest, I mean, this is a terrible, terrible roll. Obviously, we failed, and we failed pretty poorly. So what we need to do is we do need to actually see how much we fail by, because we're going to take some damage here, and we're actually going to take quite a lot. So we need to trash the highest one. Well, that would be 3, and this is what we're left with. Such a poor roll. We only managed with all of that to roll an 8, and we were looking at a 16. So that is, we need to absorb 8 damage, and we're actually going to go over in that regard. And I'm pretty sure what happens is once you go over, it's just absorbed, and that's it. We were going to lose all of the cards in our hand we need to discard, and I will confirm that. Yeah, so you can see it's even italicized here on page 20. If you have discarded every card in your hand, ignore any damage that remains. So that is going to happen. And the other thing I need to do is just confirm that there is, per the mission, nothing else to do. I did make a mistake that I don't think would have impacted anything, which is here. I forgot that this is the special mission card. In an assistance versus a threat, this is what that was. Each assisting saint must give the active player 1 card, and then the assisting saint has to recycle a card. I will do that because ultimately, since we lost, that card's gonna come out of the game because he's gonna use it as damage, but it wouldn't have impacted what happened. So that is going to be the end of the turn. Frank is gonna have to draw back up his full hand size. So he only has 4, but he already just wasted all of those cards. And we're gonna move on to Ophelia over here, and really hope that she can actually do something good, because that would be nice to show you something successful before before stopping. So here's Ophelia. She's over in the manor by herself, and she is going to begin her turn by, whoops, she's going to draw, well, actually, she's going to begin her turn by getting a hand of cards, because this is her first turn of the game. Her hand size is, oh, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, note, player's note, which is something I failed to do when I first played the first couple times. Don't burn through your cards, because you will fade away, and that's a game term, fade away, if you have no cards to draw. So, what does she have? She has a pink taser. That's pretty cool. She's got this Mondrian Cell. I guess that's the artist reference. Yep, there it is. That's a mind card. I'm not going to go through all these because we're getting long here. 2 pink tasers. And, oh, this is a good one. Fortune Cookies, and Omen of Hope, and Omen of Doom. So she's got a lot going on. She's got 6 cards. She's a soul character, really. She rolls 4 dice baseline for soul, and 3 for mind, 2 for rage and body. And she gets to examine, from her own deck and then reload or recycle it. Well, that's pretty cool. She should do that, because what that means is this is her deck, her draw deck, and what it means is so she could examine it, she can look at this, see what's coming. Well, that's a great card, a Dead Sea Salt. She could also choose to put it at the bottom. And in this particular case, what I would be looking for is not only the type of card it is, but if it is a heal card. If I find heal cards in my deck, and I have the option to put them at the back of the deck, I actually try to do that, because I want to save them basically to use the healing capacity, and one way to do that is to not have them in my hand all the time. So I don't know if that's a very valid strategy, but that is a strategy I've done. Anyway, she's going to use her own power to do that and know what's coming. And she is now going to draw. She's got Omen of Hope and Omen of Doom, so she's going to be able to decide what she wants, but she has to draw, nevertheless, a timing card. She gets another Omen of Doom, and she is at the manor. Let's take a look at the manor and the effect here. At the end, she has to choose one. Reload, which means to, can't remember, relic, gift, or recycle one card. That's the Doom side that she's currently on. And she, at the Hope side, she gets to assemble versus a relic gift. She has to add 1 soul die. Well, her soul is already high, but I want to show you, I want to try to get something here at least. So I'm going to play my Omen of Hope. If I was just playing off camera, I would go with Doom, but for this demo, I'm going to play my Omen of Hope now. I get to flip my Nexus to Hope and investigate it. In Assemble versus a gift, I get to add a bonus die. Well, that's pretty awesome. Well, it's a hookup, so that's pretty awesome. All right. Playing my Omen of Hope, I'm investigating that way. I'm investigating the manor, and so we will flip it over to Hope. And it says, in Assemble versus a relic gift, I add 1 soul die. So that could be a lot of dice right off the bat without my even having to use a card. But I did burn my Omen of Hope to get there. So going to investigate, draw in this card, and what do we get? Oh, we get a therapy dog. I haven't actually seen this card before. This is a soul gift, and it, let's see. I guess it lets you heal damage, bury, decrease soul damage, suffers. That's pretty good. So it is the healing card for something specific. Well, that makes sense, right? A therapy dog is going to heal your soul. And this icon here means we could use it to help a saint to our left or our right. Again, whatever that means in a single player game, I would play this personally as, especially when playing solo, multiple characters, just if you're at the location, this takes effect, or could take effect. If you're not, it can't. This is not going to be that difficult for us to get. It is not a relic, so we do not get an additional die during the assemble phase. We can attempt a roll of 12 using soul, which of course we're going to do, right? We can roll 4 that way. So these are our baseline inherent D6s for soul. And then, do we have anything else? Well, we certainly have, let's see, here's the therapy dog we're trying to get. And we can we could give ourselves another die. Let's see. Do we have any keywords that match up? Charm, conjure, and sense. Oh, well, you know what? We are charming. We're quite charming, actually. We get 2 dice for charming, and of course this therapy dog is charming. So this is what we're looking at right now, without even using a card. And we only need to get a 12. I mean, my bad rolling would seriously have to continue to mess that up. So let's pull back again and hope that I can get this therapy dog that I have actually saw this card before when I was setting up, but had not encountered it yet in my playthrough. So here we go. This is pretty much, we need to get a 12 or greater to get this dog. And indeed, looking at the top the top 3 values, finally I can show you a successful roll. So we have acquired this really cute dog, which makes sense, of course, right? Because she would have this therapy dog. Come on, obviously. We put this right into our hand, and it is available for further use. And that brings us to the toward the end of our turn, basically. Sanctify, we're skipping. We're not going to move, and we will end and reset. So that's a look at the the first turns in this game. A few points. Despite the length of the video so far, I haven't even talked about sealing the nexus and what that means. In this game, as in the Pathfinder Adventure card games, you must seal up the location so that the minions and the master cannot escape back into them. And in this game, there are each one has a particular requirement for doing so, and again, the theme of my discussion about this game is that requirement can often be mitigated by various rules of the scenarios. I don't think for the purposes of this video it's important for me to get into too much more detail about that, but that is what the Sanctify section of the turn order is, and you can't get to that unless you meet certain requirements for doing so, and those are story-based. What do I think of this game? Well, before I tell you that, I want to make sure I give you a proper look at all the box credits for the game, because I didn't really do that earlier, and I think that's very important. It's really easy to give a negative critique of a rule book, and I know that when I started trying to figure this game out and was having trouble, I went online and looked around, and that was really what I found, a lot of negative critiques of the rule book. And I've done that before in some videos when things have really irked me, but I tend not to focus on that so much, because my feeling is if you're committed to learning a game and interested in a game, or at least I should say if I'm committed to learning a game and I'm interested in a game, I sort of just press on. And there's a lot of fan-made content out there now for games, and in particular I'm putting up on the screen right now something I highly recommend if you're going to get this. However, I do need to say something about this rulebook, because it's just, I believe that they're going to be doing another PDF or something with updated rules, but in the real world, I am a book editor. I've been a book editor my whole career. I've been a nonfiction book editor my whole career. I have edited and published almost 1,000 nonfiction books. And looking at something like this from that perspective really frustrates me, because in essence, a rule book like this is a nonfiction book. Yes, of course, it's about a game, a totally fictional world, but the document itself is a nonfiction book. So when I say that when you have a manuscript like this, with this many elements and this many internal references and this many keywords and this much world creation, it needs to go to a professional book publishing person to review it. Not a game person, a book person, because this could have really been helped, and so easily, by somebody who knew what they were doing outside of the gaming industry. And you know, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch more time on it, but just one basic thing is, here's an example of, here's a turn example. It's a whole narrative of a card-based game without one picture of one card. without even a strip of a picture of a card so that you know what they're referring to. And all the gameplay examples in this book are like that. Here's the one strip of the one picture of a card in explaining something at the bottom, because I don't know how else they would have explained that, but I mean, this is the gameplay example for a card game. It boggles the mind, really. And the other thing that is frustrating, and I did see online that they're fixing this, but I just, I don't know why it needs to be fixed. There is, I don't know why it was published in such a way that it needed to be fixed. There's a list here at the end. I guess they call it a glossary. It's not really an index, but there's no page references anywhere. So if you're trying to figure something out and you look it up, it's like you get the very basic explanation, but you don't get the rule. You don't even get the reference to the rule, the page number reference to the rule. I could go on. I won't. It's very frustrating. So that is something to know. And I said in my, it reminded me a little bit of Mistfall, because Mistfall also had a similar situation, for me at any rate, with a lot of terminology. And by the time I came to play Mistfall, I think the game had been out longer, so there was like a ton of fan-made content, but I don't know why that needs to be the case. So that is something to think about, and if it really is something that bothers you, then you should know there's a bit of a learning curve. The game mechanics itself are fairly simple, and that is also potentially a negative. When I was playing the second scenario in particular, I found I got into a groove. The second story, I shouldn't have set that up here, where I had cards working for me. I was working with a deck that I had already built from the prior chapter. I was playing the chapters through in order, and it felt a teeny bit repetitive. The actual mechanics of the game, I would just go somewhere. I had a lot of success, and I was like going somewhere, pulling a card, rolling a die, discarding something. I was just trying to basically get through to the end. I liked the idea of it. It's this sort of cult thing that you need to deal with, and the cult members are the minions, and you have to do something to rid yourself of them. So that was sort of cool. And the detox one, the art here is actually quite nice. The detox one is also cool because the world is polluted. That's a tough one. The world is polluted and you are trying to cleanse the pollution. So the fact that even though it to some extent is a little bit, I don't want to say pasted on, but it's a construct obviously in the game. The mechanics don't necessarily change, but your goals change, and you're not just simply trying to deal with something that fits into like fight the boss kind of thing. And I appreciate that. So in that regard, I think the narrative does work. It works more as a continuous sort of campaign narrative for me than the Pathfinder games do, for whatever reason. I love those games, but game to game, I don't even really bother to keep the decks together. It just doesn't feel necessary. I just add in, I kind of reference what I would have gotten and just add that in when I'm building the deck. But here it does feel like there is a deck that you would want to maintain, a character that you would want to maintain. Unfortunately, when creating the locations, and there are some fantastic locations available in the game, and I'll just pull out and show you some that were not in what we played. So for example, who doesn't love going to a fun park? That's awesome. Because there's a skyscraper, I'll just show you some of these. I really liked the locations. But because the cards are just randomly put, here, this is pretty creepy. Subway. Because the cards are just randomly drawn into these locations, at least for this chapter of this story in the book, you can get things that don't make a lot of sense. So, for example, that therapy dog could have ended up in the subway. Well, I guess there are therapy dogs in the subway. That's a bad example. I should know that, living in New York City. But the therapy dog could just, end up randomly wandering around the fun park by itself or in a back alley. Maybe the therapy dog is a bad example because I suppose dogs can go anywhere. But any card can be anywhere. So that can become a little bit take you out of the story, because are you going to really randomly find some dead sea salt, for example, in a skyscraper, or even in you know, on a subway car or whatever? That can take you out a little bit, but you just have to kind of go with it, I suppose. And the same thing is true when you're building your decks. You can rearrange your cards at the end of a mission. You can exchange cards with your fellow companions, and the restrictions are in terms of the type of card. So if you are River, for example, you can't have more than a certain number, or if you're anybody, you can't have more than your allotted number of body cards or soul cards, but what they are is completely up, you know, up for grabs. So you can end up with a character that has cards that don't really seem to necessarily relate to who they are. That said, the characters, as I mentioned earlier, I think are a very strong suit of the game. They are varied, and they are thematic in terms of what their special powers are. There is the favorite character that I've really enjoyed playing and am going to continue on with is this grandmother, Diana Jones, and I'll show you, give a look at her here. She has, here she is, and she's got this great, she's a gambler, and she's got this great ability where she can flip a die. Flipping means reading the other side of it. So she can turn a 3 into a 4, and most significantly, of course, she can turn a 1 into a 6. So she's got a great great power there, and each character does play differently. I think that's another great strength of the game in terms of the 10 character options that you have. And overall, it offers a middleweight adventure card manipulation romp through a story. Middleweight meaning heavier than the Pathfinder, but lighter than Arkham Horror, if those signposts make sense to you. The main challenge is in getting through understanding the rules and the multiple internal references to keywords and jargon that makes sense only in the context of the game, and that is not necessarily always adequately described. Thanks for watching.